Hello, everyone. My name is Mike, and this is the Bored Cyborg.
I'm melting!
You've all heard of the famous movie monsters like Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, the Wolfman, King Kong, Godzilla, but how many of you have heard of the Incredible Melting Man?
Woo!
Oh, I guess that guy has. In 1977, B-movie director William Sachs brought us the first new horror creature, the Incredible Melting Man. The first new horror creature. I don't even know what that means. Not only is it bemusing and redundant, it's also dumb. Isn't every new horror creature the first? I mean, isn't that what new implies? In regard to film, in 1931, Universal's Dracula was new and first, and in 1954, Godzilla was new and first, and so on. And yes, I'm aware that there were iterations of these characters before Universal popularized them, but you catch my drift. Also, you can't just say that and make it manifest. It's up to the audience to determine if this creature is worthy to be the first in a new line of movie monsters. Shit, I just stumbled upon a better tagline. The first in a new line of movie monsters. Voila! It flows better, it makes fucking sense, and... I'm sorry, I'm entangled in a spider's web of semantics. Anyway, today I'll be talking about Follow That Bird, starring Big Bird from Sesame Street. Whoa. I believe I've just lost my train of thought. Where was I? Ah, of course, The Incredible Melting Man. Originally titled The Ghoul from Outer Space, The Incredible Melting Man is quite a film. The story opens up with a manned exploration mission to Saturn. This is where we're introduced to Colonel Steve West, the man who would soon become the Incredible Melting Man. From now on, I'm going to refer to him as Tim, since his name is 3 times as many syllables as it should be. You've all heard of Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney Jr., and Sr., Claude Rains, Gunnar Hansen, Kane Hodder, and Robert Englund. But how many of you have heard of Alex Rebar?
Woo! Yeah!
Jesus.
Yeah!
Okay, got it. He's a big fan.
Woo!
Alex Rebar plays both Colonel Steve West and the Incredible Melting Man. Or Tim. He sadly doesn't have much screen time as Colonel Steve West, but he uses the time he does have to snare the audience's attention by delivering one of the worst lines in the history of cinema.
Magnificent. You've never seen anything until you've seen the sun through the rings of Saturn.
Ooh. One more time.
Magnificent. You've never seen anything until you've seen the sun through the rings of Saturn.
Ah, that's the old adage, Steve-O. What an immortal line. Poetic, really.
My grandpapa used to tell me that every night right before he tucked me into bed, and I just knew that one day I'd see the sun through the rings of Saturn. Or at least Jupiter.
Honestly, I could not deliver that line any worse even if I tried my damnedest. Yeah. It is some of the worst acting I have ever seen. Oh, and the actual line is asinine. I've got to get moving. At this rate, this review is going to be 3 hours long. It's just infinitely remarkable. Following that modern-day proverb, the 3 men are exposed to a radiation blast that renders 2 of them dead. But not Colonel Steve West. He just suffers a minor nosebleed. No biggie like P. Diddy Bad Boy Tours. Once back on Earth, Steve is transferred to some sort of a hospital. Honestly, what kind of a hospital is this? I gather that it's a top-secret government one, but it looks like a warehouse for incredibly large pieces of machinery. So, Steve West is in recovery and is bandaged up from head to toe. Sorta like the Mummy. Upon getting out of bed, he begins to tear away his bandages, and seeing what he now looks like, he promptly loses his mind and begins his murderous rampage. Sorta like the Invisible Man. This is also where we meet his first victim, an adorably plump nurse who is just bursting out of that tiny nurse outfit. With Tim apparently nowhere in sight, the nurse hauls ass down a corridor that looks like a prison for bison. The slow motion usage in this scene makes me proud to be a human. John Woo must be envious of the skill on display here. The nurse then explodes through a glass door, not giving a fuck about the conventional way to use it. But it's all for naught, as Tim's agility allows him to get the best of her and he annihilates her. So the film starts off with a bang, a blast, and a burst. Enter the leading man, Burr DeBenning as Dr. Ted Nelson. Steve West, Ted Nelson. I think it's safe to say that Stephen King had nothing to do with the naming of these characters. Luckily, Burr DeBenning could actually act. At least when compared to a box of cereal.
Oh, God, it's his ear.
An ear? All I see is pepperoni pizza. Or pep-ear-roni pizza. Or ketchup and semen. But the script is so farts that it doesn't f***ing matter. This script could make Marlon Brando look like Marlon Wayans. And the dialogue often strays off into completely pointless tangents about f***ing lemons.
Those are lemons, not oranges.
Oh, you're no fun anymore.
Doc Nelson is tasked with tracking down the escaped Tim and bringing him back in for further testing and recovery. The man who assigns him this task is General Michael Perry, played by veteran actor Myron Healy, who upon hearing the news of Steve's escape, finds a more secretive place to discuss the matter.
Oh? How are you, Doctor?
The rest of the 84-minute runtime follows the two bumbling leads on the trail of the ever-elusive Melting Man. And they do a really shitty job of tracking him, especially considering that Tim moves about like a drunken hobo with a peg leg. Sorta like Frankenstein. He's not threatening or imposing at all, but he apparently has super strength, which is displayed in this scene where he rips a fisherman's head off his shoulders and tosses it in the river. The filmmakers had utmost confidence in this prosthetic head as they linger on it in slow motion for what seems like an eternity. This scene is absolutely hilarious, but also a tad unsettling, mostly due to the slow motion and the trippy synth sound work. And just when you think it can't get any better, the decapitated head tumbles down a waterfall and smashes into the rocks below in an explosion of Technicolor blood and gore. It's glorious. Throughout the film, Doc Nelson constantly tells the audience that he needs to bring Steve West back in to determine exactly what happened to him. Doctor, doctor, can't you see he's melting, melting? We know it has something to do with radiation, but other than that, we never, ever find out. In fact, we never find out shit about the story, characters, or anything else that matters in a movie. But none of that superficial shit matters in this movie. The film's technical aspects are comparable to those little splashes of poo water that sometimes splatter your ass cheeks when you take a shit. You know what I'm talking about. In other words, they're bad. The cinematography is so suck that they couldn't even get dialogue shots right. A lot of them are awkwardly close and dead on, and not in an artistic way like the Coen brothers. A couple compositions are decent, but amidst the muck of 95% of the shots, it just comes across as luck. Oh, and the lighting is exquisite. Believe it or not, this unlit actor is the future Academy Award-winning director Jonathan Demme, who directed a little movie called Silence of the Lambs. I'd imagine working on this movie was a good lesson on how not to make an Academy Award-winning film. The editing of the film was passed off to a second editor halfway through, and boy does it show. It's cut akin to a customer in a barbershop run by the blind. There is a 30-second sequence of shots that shows Ted Nelson's legs running up multiple flights of stairs. It's so intense. On top of that, there are multiple shots before transitions that feel like they should have been cut 3 to 4 seconds earlier. It's almost like they cut after the actors dropped character.
Geiger counter? You mean he's radioactive?
Just a little bit.
Just a little?
And there's a random one-time chroma key green split screen effect that makes 0 sense. So it's pretty clear that this film is the opposite of quality, but there is a saving grace as well as an explanation as to why the film sucks shit through a straw. The saving grace in terms of quality is the special effects. The Melting Man's look, although inconsistent, is arguably iconic. Every time he's on screen, he's oozing with all sorts of viscous liquids of various colors and consistencies, and it legitimately looks like he's in a perpetual state of melting. Everything he touches is immediately glazed with goo. And that sounds like the tagline for a porn movie. The only problem with Tim is that he melts and melts and melts and never loses body mass. That is, until the final shot. The film even has moments attempting to evoke sympathy for the Melting Man, Sort of like the Wolfman. The film rounds out as you'd expect, with Tim being reduced to a steaming pile of goop, or Nickelodeon gack. According to the lead makeup effects guy, the original idea was to achieve the effect of a gradually melting man, hence the goddamn title, which would have been awesome. And do you want to know who that lead makeup effects guy was? None other than the venerable master of makeup, the legend Rick Baker. Confident that he had graduated to bigger budget films, upon being asked to work on the film, he put in what he describes as an outrageous bid of nearly $10,000 to do all the makeup work. Joke was on him because the producers okayed it, and the rest is history. Even more mind-blowing was the team he had working for him. Greg Canham, who's won 4 Academy Awards for his excellent aging-centric makeup work, was Baker's protege at the time and helped him with the effects. This dude has worked with some of the biggest names in the business like Spielberg, James Cameron, Francis Ford Coppola, and David Fincher. Then there was veteran makeup man Harry Woolman, who worked on a bunch of genre films in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and finally, the last guy who worked with Baker was yet another legend, Rob Bottin. Bottin would go on to work on films like The Howling, RoboCop, Total Recall, and The Motherfucking Thing. Going even further, Bottin was inspired by Baker's work in The Incredible Melting Man to create the toxic waste-drenched Melting Man in RoboCop. This film is truly incredible, just like its Melting Man. And that brings me to an explanation as to why the film is as bad as it is. According to the director William Sachs, the producers essentially stole his film from him once it was shot and edited and transformed it into the laughable masterpiece that it is. And I don't know if I should be grateful for that or pissed off. Sachs was inspired by Night of the Living Dead as well as the old EC comics like Tales from the Crypt, and was aiming to make a satire parody horror film that didn't take itself too seriously. This is probably why the jarring comedic scenes make you feel like you just changed the channel.
I just thought of something.
What?
Where can we put the lemons?
You see, the producers thought a straight-up, super serious horror film would do better financially. And this led them to add and reshoot a bunch of scenes, fire the editor, and royally f*** up the director-writer's vision. That's never happened before. And you know what? After watching an interview where Sachs talks about and defends the film, I believe him. Sure, he could be covering his tracks, but if you look at his other work, it mostly consists of campy B-movies. He was never trying to make Casablanca here. Call me gullible, but it seems to me like he just wanted to make a fun movie. And despite its butchering by inept producers, I believe he still did so. And folks, pay heed when I tell you, this film is magnificent, and you've never seen anything until you've seen The Incredible Melting Man. Or Tim. I just want to thank you all for checking out my review of one of the best bad movies of all time, The Incredible Melting Man. If you enjoyed what you saw, feel free to give the video a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, as well as the little bell for notifications if you want to see more videos like it. And I encourage you all to leave your thoughts about the film in the comments below, so we could get a little discussion rolling. Anyways, guys, I will see you next time. Bored Cyborg, out. I'm melting!
Magnificent. You've never seen anything until you've seen the sun through the rings of Saturn.
I farted.